The Morning Sports Desk, available on demand on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and WHADenaRadio.com.
Is the Morning Sports Desk on a Monday, the 9th of December. I'm CJ Baumgartner. It's Corey Tackman as the co-host here. A lot going on as we enter into a month of December, which always kind of feels like a weird month high school sports-wise, because everybody knows that like December you need to get games in, but also, you know, like late December, January is really when it feels like winter sports gets into overdrive, but there's still plenty of stuff going on. I don't know. It's just kind of a not weird vibe, but it's just there's Christmas going on. Everybody knows there's a school break coming up in a couple weeks. It's always a time of year where I feel like everybody's just kind of waiting around until January to really make their move. Doesn't it feel like that?
I think that's true for us.
Right.
I don't think that's true for the kids and the coaches and parents who are actually having to do it every day.
That's fair.
But yeah, I mean, for us, it feels like, okay, once January gets here, then we're like,
now we're rocking and rolling.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I think if you're, I mean, cripes, you've been doing it for 3 weeks already. If you're girls basketball, and almost 6 weeks if you're girls hockey at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll kind of keep monitoring things. A big moment for us on Saturday was the fact that we got our winter broadcast schedule rolling with the Denny Kaatz Memorial Tournament going on at the Wadena Deer Creek Middle High School gym. A lot of wrestling going on, boys wrestling, girls wrestling, and in the starting off with the girls wrestling kind of breakdown. The Wadena Deer Creek girls team finished second, UNC third, Staples Motley fourth, OTC fifth. Osakas coming in at sixth. You have DL in the mix at 9, Pequot Lakes, Pine River at 10, New York Mills 11, and obviously a lot of names kind of appearing on this stretch. Connor Reese of Staples Motley, Michaela Pesta of Staples Motley, both getting first place finishes in the 100A and 100B weight classes, respectively. Looking down the line at 112, Leah Greenwald of Staples Motley, first place in the 112. Donnie Hobrecht of UNC, first place in 118. Kaylee Endress of Wadena Deer Creek, first place at 124. 148 weight class. I'm going down the line here, kind of reading things off the line here. So kind of takes a break from the local bit until 190, Joy Crawl of Osakas taking a first place there, and no wrestlers at 235 in that one. So kind of girls wrestling, again, as we talked about, much like cross country, in my mind, I feel like of a sport that's really just picked up and only gotten bigger and bigger and more competitive in the area. And girls wrestling having a good start to kind of, again, I know the season's been going on, there's been some stuff, but it felt like this is kind of, again, one of the bigger meets of the early season, and to see that going up and strong is always a good thing.
Yeah, off and running officially on the winter sports season. It feels nice to be here. And are you running through any more? Because I know we've got a lot on our schedule coming up this week.
Yeah, let's take a look at the boys here quick for the Denny Kaatz Memorial Wrestling Invite. Staples Motley coming away with a first place finish, and UNC right behind them there. Also along the list, Detroit Lakes 5th, Pequot Lakes Pine River 7th, Wadena Deer Creek 9th, OTC 10th on this list. And Corey, believe it or not, a lot of Staples Motley names make their appearance here. Garrett Bierga of Staples Motley at 107 comes away with first place. Caden Kramer at 121 of Staples Motley. Gage Bierga of Staples Motley at 127. Eli Greenwalt of Staples Motley at 133. Parker Zutter of Pequot Lakes Pine River Bacchus at 139. We have also on this list Colby Tappy at 160, taking first place as well. And at the 215 weight class, Eli Royko of UNC coming away with first place honors there. Kevin Daly of UNC also taking home the first place finish at 285. Yeah, a big day of wrestling. Kyle and Dan were on the call, Corey. They got our winter sports broadcast schedule off and running. They were broadcasting a busy final round from the Wadena Deer Creek Middle High School gym over on KWAD over the weekend. And it kicks off a busy broadcast season because, Corey, we're getting back in the saddle as soon as tomorrow.
Yeah, we've got 4 basketball games the rest of the week, and I won't go into too huge detail because obviously on the day of those games we'll be able to dive into it a little more. But tomorrow, Pine River Bacchus at Sabika, Verndale at Wadena Deer Creek, girls basketball and boys basketball. Thursday, Wadena Deer Creek at Park Rapids area, girls basketball. Friday, Monaga at Staples Motley, girls basketball. Those details, if they aren't yet, will be up by the end of the day today, Monday, the 9th of December at WHA.radio.com. So follow along with that winter sports schedule. We did all fall, we'll go into details about those particular games the day of, but yeah, wrestling started it on Saturday. We've got basketball all week. It looks like next week wrestling and hockey make their broadcast debuts. CJ put a lot of work into getting this broadcast schedule ready to rock and roll. And I suppose, CJ, despite your monologue at the beginning about how it doesn't feel quite ready, we better get ready because it's our turn next.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse when you have a team like Staples Motley go to the Prep Bowl because it's fun. You get to go and do all that. We talked about that. The one downside is all of a sudden you kind of like are used to maybe like a 3-4 week break from high school sports to get you ready. And then by the time that comes, you're like, all right, I need to like do a game. I need to do a game again. I want to get back and doing it. And not that I don't feel those things, but all of a sudden I'm like, as soon as that ended, I'm like, okay, we got to get the winter sports broadcast schedule ready. And then it's Thanksgiving. And then last week, we had the Radiothon and empty stocking and getting ready for the Denny Kaatz broadcast. And all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm back again. It feels like we just got done doing it. Now we're going to go do it again, which is awesome. And I'm never going to turn down an opportunity to go and call a basketball game, get paid for doing it, get into the game for free, do all that stuff. I'm ready to go again. Obviously, like you said, Corey, we're going to break down these games more throughout when they get closer. Like tomorrow, we'll break down our games there. But just to kind of sneak preview to the end of the week, you get to broadcast for the first ever time from the Nest on Friday. That's got to be something you're looking forward to.
I'll talk more about it on Friday. We'll have a lot to discuss. Yeah, it's going to be cool.
That's what in the broadcasting business we call a tease.
I would like to point out that Staples Motley Cardinal fans, CJ called your run to the Prep Bowl a curse. So you heard it here. You heard it here on the Morning Sports Desk.
I said a blessing and a curse for me personally, not for anybody else or anybody in particular. Looking at Walker-Hackensack-Akeley girls basketball, not only are they the defending Section 5A champions, they're also the favorites to go and win that section again this year. But one of their best players hit a big milestone. Aubrey Morrison last week against Chisholm got her 2,000th career point. 2,000.
2,000 is no joke.
That is 1,000 is no joke. 2,000 is just legit. I mean, that's such a, and it's different now. Back in the day, I know sometimes some of these all look like video game numbers, but still to get 1,000's awesome. And you're a really good player and people are going to remember you when you played. 2,000 is just, I mean, literally double that, double all the excitement, double all the hype, double all the things that she's meant to that program. And it's just a cool spot for them. And again, a section in 5A that's, I think, open. I think there's teams, obviously that can compete in that section, but also, I mean, they won it a year ago and they still have a player like her on that team. And there's no reason why that team isn't considered the favorite to go back and win that section. Again, still early, but just a cool milestone for them to hit. And that's a program that's really kind of excited for what they can do this season. And to get that out of the way and to enjoy that in the beginning has got to be a fun moment.
It's a real number. If you're scoring 2,000 points in your career, that you are a dominant basketball player.
And not just the dominant one, but like for multiple years. It wasn't like you had a good couple years, like you for likely 4+ years were a menace on the court.
It's really cool, man. It's 2,000 is you can score 1,000 points in your high school career if you play 4 years and average like 13 a game or something like that. Mm-hmm. 2,000's a real number. There's just nothing, and 1,000's also a real number. I'm not denigrating that. 2,000 is an unbelievable accomplishment that not many people ever even sniff.
Right. 1,000, like you said, 1,000 is a great number. I don't think I got to 15 varsity points in my entire career. So the fact that anybody gets to like 100 is just, hey, good job. You were a nice little player. The fact of 1,000 is you were great, and you should get recognition for getting 1,000 points, which means that when you get to 2,000, it's like a bigger, like it just is, because it's hard to get to 1,000. So by extension, I'm using real tough logic here. It's even more incredible when you can get to 2,000. Like
the Walker-Hackensack-Akeley girls basketball posted it on their Facebook page, shared on the Sports Cow right now. I just did it as we were talking, CJ. So you can
article to come later. By the time somebody's listening to this, we'll also have an article up at WHA.com, and we'll share that on the Cow as well.
Moo.
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 Moo. Moo. Moo.
Moo. Are there Denny Kaatz public? Are those scores public somewhere?
On the guillotine.
Excellent.
Yes.
All right, there we go.
There you go. That's where you can find stuff.
That was just a production meeting.
That's an on-air production meeting. Yeah, we'll also, I mean, heck, we can get a post up on the Cow. That's no problem. That
we'll get it on the air. Might as well. You know what I'm saying?
Moo.
Moo.
Moo. There was always a show I watched, and it doesn't matter the name of it, but there was an episode where it was like a live action show, but it played a lot like a cartoon.
Wait,
like,
it doesn't matter because you can't remember, or because it's inappropriate?
No, just because if I said it, you go, oh, okay.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And the part of it was one of the guys was dressed up as the school's mascot.
Yeah.
And every time he's like, can I get a woo? And then like one person just be like, woo. And then like he'd say it again later, and like a bunch of people would show up out of nowhere, and I'll go, woo. And then he'd say it again. And then like it just has this like very like generic shot of like planet Earth, and it just has like a woo like pop up. So whenever I say, can I get a moo? I'm just expecting like a in my mind, there's like just a generic shot of planet Earth. And then it just has the words moo kind of like pop out and then like fade away. But it's just Corey Tackman going moo.
Oh, what was the show?
Yeah. I'll tell it to you, but you're going to have no idea.
It doesn't matter, man. You can't do that. You can't tell a whole 3-minute story and then be like, the show doesn't matter.
Not the show. Fine. It was a Nickelodeon show in the early 2000s called Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. There you go.
There we go. That's easy.
Yeah.
That was just a weird thing to admit.
Only I know. And hopefully there's somebody listening that remembered that show because it was funny.
You were the only person you think to ever. How selfish are you, CJ? You think you're the only one to watch that show?
I just think that I don't. If there's high school athletes listening to this, it's too old for them. And I think if there's most parents listening, it was too young for them. Like, or the show was.
You and I both know we don't do this show for anybody but ourselves. It's okay.
Okay, so the Minnesota Vikings, Corey.
Yeah.
We knew that this game had been one that we circled on the calendar, and all week we kind of were talking about like, is there, like the Vikings can win this game, the Vikings can lose this game. Kirk Cousins hasn't been playing good football, but us more than anybody should know that the moment Kirk Cousins plays bad football, his best game is always right around the corner. And we were just kind of on bated breath waiting for this. I think we were both confident the Vikings would win, but I think a Kirk Cousins, for lack of a better term, revenge game was probably around the corner. But it was at the end of the day, when the game was done, that everybody turned around, and instead of like the stereotypical, instead of the stereotypical, you like that, it more of just kind of ended up being like the squeak, when Kirk Cousins did the "you like that" after the Vikings won that playoff game, and he's like, I got 3 words for you. He's like, you like that? And then everyone goes like, yeah, and everybody's like so hyped up. It was more like the squeak that time. It didn't quite have the same effect. Kirk Cousins threw a couple interceptions, threw for a nice amount of yards, and the Vikings blew him out 42-21, thanks to old Sammy Darnold throwing not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 touchdown passes and over 300 yards, something a Vikings quarterback hasn't done in 20 years since one Dante Culpepper was throwing dimes to Randy Moss. How are we feeling about this performance, Corey?
Well, this may be petty, but I never really liked this was being coined like the Kirk Cousins revenge game.
Mm-hmm.
For the life of me, what did that guy need revenge from? Or what did he need to? He needed to avenge the Vikings offering the most years and money that anybody had ever offered any quarterback ever when they signed him the first time, and more years and even more guaranteed money like the second go around? Like, what was Kirk Cousins? What did he need revenge? If anything, the Vikings needed revenge for Kirk Cousins being like, you know what? You haven't done enough for me monetarily. I'm leaving to go to Atlanta for even more money still. This was not a Kirk Cousins revenge game. This was a Vikings revenge game for Kirk Cousins for the second time in his career saying, peace out to a franchise who's treated me well.
And by the way, you're right. This is a big distinction. The Vikings didn't cut Kirk Cousins.
No, this did nothing to that guy.
The Vikings gave him every contract he wanted up until this point. Kirk Cousins left for guaranteed money. If it was up to the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell, Kirk Cousins would still be his quarterback.
They offered him like a real deal.
They just didn't offer him $40 million a year.
Correct.
He knew that they were going to draft a quarterback. So Kirk Cousins took the guaranteed money, and instead they drafted his successor right away. In fact, 2 picks earlier than what the Vikings did with J.J. McCarthy.
Yep.
So, congratulations.
Cousins revenge game.
He's a Hall of Fame bag chaser, and I mean that endearingly. You got your money, man. Congratulations to that. You're the king of that. You and your agent will have books written about it.
He pioneered it. This idea of getting guaranteed money.
Mm-hmm.
Changed that side of the business for every player forever.
Right. And the Vikings got Sam Darnold for $10 million. And with a Kirk Cousins cap hit still on the roster, we're able to sign Jonathan Grenard, sign Andrew Van Ginkel, sign Blake Cashman, sign Aaron Jones, sign Sam Darnold. And boy, oh boy, is all that money. Instead, that would have been Kirk Cousins and maybe Aaron Jones, maybe Kirk Cousins and Andrew Van Ginkel, maybe, or you sign Kirk Cousins to an extension and Jonathan Grenard, but then you don't get anybody else. All of those players have been highly successful and highly important for the Minnesota Vikings this season. And that all of them coming together in this combination would not have happened if Kirk Cousins decided, you know what? I want to go to an organization that's going to treat me. Because he said, it's not about the dollars, Corey. It's never about the money.
Right.
The dollars represent. And that's that we think you're a franchise quarterback. Well, the Falcons gave you that money and what it represented. And then they went and drafted your replacement. And by the way, everybody in Atlanta is clamoring for Michael Penix to play right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Kirk Cousins over his last 5 games,
8 interceptions in 4 games or something.
Yeah. They had the graphic up on Sunday Night Football. Sam Darnold over his last 4 games has thrown 11 touchdown passes to no interceptions. Meanwhile, Kirk Cousins has thrown no touchdown passes and 8 interceptions. And look, at the end of the day, Vikings, when they got up by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, this was tied 21-21 into the fourth quarter. But the Vikings they got ahead by a touchdown. There was a fumble on a kickoff return, and Kirk Cousins was down by 2 scores midway through the fourth quarter. I put this out on social media. It's the Vikings' worst. It's the worst thing that could happen. You get garbage time Kirk. So all of a sudden, stat line, he's got 300 plus yards, sure, no touchdowns, and played just well enough to where fans could go, yeah, he didn't play great, but what's he supposed to do? And what? It's not his fault that there was a fumble. And it was you just see Atlanta going through everything that the Vikings fans were going with no, it's not all on Kirk's fault. This thing happened here. This thing happened here. But why don't we have a quarterback that can overcome a mishap, a misstep, something going wrong? And the Vikings with Sam Darnold, there was somebody asked Kevin O'Connell something like that. I can't remember the exact wording, and I want to find it because it was a little not cheeky, and I don't think Kevin O'Connell meant this as it's not a jab at Kirk, but it's just more of the quarterback I got off the scrap heap that nobody believed in, just threw 5 touchdown passes on the guy who I wanted to come back instead. Had a situation, not a situation, but had a thing after the game where Kevin O'Connell, this is according to Kevin Seifert of ESPN, the usually chatty Kevin O'Connell smiled and offered a one-word answer when Ben Gessling of the Star Tribune asked if today makes him feel validated for this year's QB transition from Kirk Cousins to Sam Darnold. He just looked and said no, and then smiled and walked off. And the press room kind of giggled along with him as he walked off. This is not to, we talked about this off air. This is not to kick Kirk Cousins on his way out the door, because that guy, he'll probably play for a couple more years, but his career is not in a great spot right now. And the Falcons aren't in a great spot right now, and whatever. So this isn't meant to kick on the Vikings. Just won. They won this one. There was and this is Pat. So like, I don't want to like just bag and down Kirk specifically, but there was a lot of Vikings fans, Corey, on social media that went, what are we going to do without Kirk Cousins? Oh, what are we going to do? Oh, Justin Jefferson's going to demand a trade. And oh my goodness, like who's going to get the football to him? And Sam Darnold, oh, good luck with that. I mean, like and of course there are fans who just wanted Justin Jefferson trade chatter on social media. But like there were so many people that thought Sam Darnold's going to be the one thrown to Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson better demand a trade. Justin Jefferson just had 100+ yards and 2 touchdowns with Sam Darnold today. Jordan Addison had over 100 yards. TJ Hawkinson had 50+ receiving yards in that game. Aaron Jones got a touchdown. Like this is to all the people. Kirk Cousins was a fine quarterback, but he had a ceiling, and that ceiling held the team back when you consider the amount of money you were putting into him. It's nothing against Kirk Cousins totally as a person, as a player, as a whatever. He just could only take you so far. And it was time for the Vikings to look on door number 2. Now, nobody thought this would be door number 2. This was the 100th percentile outcome right now. But man, does it feel validating for Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell and the franchise to say, you know what? Let's see what's behind door number 2. And it's working.
I think probably more than anything is like, it's fun to indict Kirk, and it's fun right now to lift Darnold up.
Right.
A few points. One, probably it's really hard to come back from an Achilles injury. There's 2 pretty major quarterbacks in the league who are trying to come back a year after an Achilles injury. Maybe that's more difficult than we wanted to initially give them credit for.
Kirk tried to come back less than a year after that. Like
correct.
12 months, I should say.
Correct. So we probably need to give them a little credit for that. We probably need to be careful in our talk about Darnold. Like, it still has only been 13 games.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Now, has he been awesome? He's been awesome. There's just no...
Especially since the Jacksonville game.
Right, exactly. And the Jacksonville game wasn't good, but he was good before the Jacksonville game also.
Mm-hmm.
So it has been, like you mentioned, did anybody see this version of Sam Darnold coming? No, not a single one. Not a single one of us. Even those who were like, well, this could turn into like a Baker Mayfield reclamation project. Wouldn't that be fun?
Mayfield didn't play like this.
Even those people didn't see this coming. The point I think we're missing is that Kevin O'Connell might be really good. Kevin O'Connell might be really, really good at this sort of stuff. Or maybe it's not this sort of stuff. Maybe Darnold's always been good and Kirk Cousins has always been good. And Kevin O'Connell is like really good. He might just be a really good coach. He was 11-1, I think, in one score game, or 11-0 in one score game, 11-1 in one score games 2 full seasons ago.
Mm-hmm.
He was 6-8 in one score games last season, and he's whatever he is this. Like,
he lost one score game this year technically because it was
5-1 maybe in one score games this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like that.
That is an unbelievable record,
especially when you consider that one score games, generally speaking, are coin flips.
Correct. So, some of it's luck,
mm-hmm.
and because they are coin flips, they can go either way, and we could very easily be talking about this differently. But for the time being, this is a pretty decent representation, I think, of his teams perform well and get wins in these games when they're close. There's obviously more to it than just looking at the final result. Are they holding on for dear life because they're up early? Are they finding ways to blow it but don't? Whatever. We've talked about it many, many times. This year is very different than it was a couple of years ago. It feels very different than that team that went 11-1 in one score games. But it just might be that Kevin O'Connell, it's fun to make fun of Kirk. It's fun to praise Darnold. The real story here is that Kevin O'Connell might be good.
Not just like, hey, we got a nice head coach. And like Zimmer was that. Like Zimmer, I think, for his flaws, he also was like a competent NFL head coach if you look in totality of the Zimmer era.
Yeah.
But Kevin O'Connell has a chance. I mean, already, if he gets to like, I'm just kind of future casting here a little bit. If he gets to like an NFC championship game this year, let's say, He's already probably surpassed Mike Zimmer in terms of like franchise, like great, like how you'll be remembered. And in that case, there's only two head coaches that really are going to be remembered on top of that. And that's Denny Green and Bud Grant. And Bud Grant is likely never going to be surpassed unless you win a Super Bowl. But there's a good chance Kevin O'Connell could retire as being the second best Vikings head coach of all time. And that's within range.
And it's why some of these other conversations around the players, we need to just, we probably, I like making fun of Kirk. We probably need to ease up on Kirk.
Yeah.
I like praising Darnold. We probably need to, there's still 1, 2, 3, 4 games plus the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs. They have 11 wins. They're going to make the playoffs, barring a complete catastrophe. So, but a complete catastrophe is in play. And I don't mean that as like, oh, woe is me, Vikings fans. I just mean that because that's how it works.
Like the defense could get banged up and Darnold just maybe slows down a little bit. And like, then
the reason they could lose is because of Darnold, or maybe they'd lose a game in the first round of the playoffs because Darnold throws 3 interceptions or something like. What I'm saying is what Darnold's doing is special, and we need to recognize that. But maybe, just maybe, the reason why these Vikings teams have been pretty good 2 of the last 3 years is because they've got a coach who can do this.
Yeah. I mean, Kevin O'Connell this is the one thing, and everybody there's a couple things to this. One, this also goes to credit to Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah in a way, because everybody wants to talk about how bad the 2022 draft was, and it was bad because like none of the players that they drafted are either on the roster or starting. So it was a bad draft. But they did draft Jordan Addison the next year, and you do get credit for that. But you also know what Kwesi did in 2022 that was more important than any draft pick? They nailed the head coaching hire. And that's it. Like, you got Kevin O'Connell. He was the one who had to say, I want Kevin O'Connell to be my head coach. And you nail that. And when you have a GM that's in place, you have a head coach that's in place, and your franchise is in just such a good, optimistic direction. There's going to be salary cap space that's coming up. Kirk's dead cap is going to come off the books. Danielle Hunter's dead cap is coming off the books. So you'll have more money, or at least the same amount of money this offseason as he did a year before. And theoretically, this is a conversation down the line. So I'm just throwing this out there, not as much as a discussion point, more as an aside. Like, you could bring Sam Darnold back on the franchise tag if you wanted, if you just factor in that dead money that just goes right to Darnold. You still have money to play in free agency, not as much, but it's still on the table. So this team, the optimistic, even this is the joke is that they're 11-2 messing around with Sam Darnold in a rebuilding year. And to see this franchise, this wasn't supposed to be the plan yet. The Vikings accelerated the plan by a year. This was supposed to be next year, which is the thought of the Vikings competing at an 11-2 mark. They haven't been 11-2, Corey, since 2009 with Favre. Like, and that team also crumbled down the stretch, by the way, and finished 12-4. But this is all to say is this organization's in a really good spot right now. And yesterday, by the way, we talk about all those 1-score wins, and the Vikings only play 1-score games. The fourth quarter was a butt kicking. And that final drive where Aaron Jones finished with the touchdown and ran it was just the Vikings did what people like, well, they put away a team and get a game and get a drive that just puts the game on. They did there. They put the Falcons were clamoring for the Vikings to put them out of their misery, and they did. And they get credit for that. And this team is not 2022 like we've talked about before, but also the fact of the Vikings had a negative point differential in 2022 because they barely won games, and the games they lost, they got their butts kicked. They've lost their 2 games this year by a combined 12 points. Their point differential is going to be like close to plus 100 by the end of the year, which is what a Super Bowl winning team is around. This is a good team.
Well, and I do think it's important, a couple add-ons to this, and then whatever, we can do whatever we need to. But
yeah,
none of this conversation from my perspective is about the Vikings winning the Super Bowl this year either. Right. I want to be very clear that they could. They're a good team. I'm not saying they will. That's just not how this works. I'm not willing to have that. About the only team I feel confident in winning the Super Bowl this year is Detroit, because whatever they're doing is just
because they have the devil magic. I don't know.
Right. It's just crazy what they're doing. And that's fine. What I'm saying is, if the Vikings lose to Chicago on Monday Night Football, all of the stuff we're saying is still true. If the Vikings would have lost to Kirk Cousins this past weekend, all of this stuff is true. It's just nice to ride the high of this wave of like beating the absolute pants off of Atlanta. You know, a game they should have destroyed Atlanta. They were 4.5-point favorites, and they just should have beat the pants off of them, and they did. So what I hope that this conversation is not like, I don't mean this in the hyperbolic week to week sort of thing. What this past week felt like is confirmation of things I've been starting to feel anyway about Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings organization and things going the right way. I still need Kwesi to draft better, period. But what he's doing in free agency, bringing in Kevin O'Connell, to your point, in the first place, deciding not to re-sign Kirk, and, offering him a fair number, but allowing him to, if he wanted to go elsewhere, he was going to be able to go elsewhere. Like, all of these things, he does get credit for it. The Vikings are in a really good spot, and none of that means I'm going to be sad if they don't. I'm going to be disappointed if they don't win the Super Bowl. I'm over that part as a fan. I will, if they were undefeated and if this was the 98 Vikings, I'd be sad. This is the 09. I feel sad, but this is just really fun. They haven't plateaued. It feels like it's upward. Like you talked about.
Exactly. And also the fact for the Vikings, when you look at it, they could have, by the way, after that 2022 season, they could have said, all right, Kirk Cousins, you're retiring a Viking. We're going to pay you. You're going to be our guy. We're going to figure it out. And they didn't. And this isn't just a Kirk thing. They also told Adam Thielen, hey, man, this was fun. We got time to move on. Eric Kendricks, the same thing. They moved after winning 13 games and winning the division and building the camaraderie and all that. They made the hard choice of starting they took a step back in 2023 because they had to. They had a plan when they came in to clean the books, and they didn't re-sign Kirk Cousins after the 2022 season. They said, no, let's wait another year. And they did offer Kirk. They wanted Kirk back, but they also left. They didn't want to hamstring themselves to where he was their only option. That they were shrewd in this entire process. And that's not just a Kirk Cousins thing, but the New York Giants, by the way, after their playoff appearance and playoff win in 2022, they doubled down on everything they were doing. And that whole coaching staff and front office is getting fired.
I would argue they were probably, when this, obviously I don't know anything. I would argue that the Vikings were probably very upfront with Cousins and said, just so you know, we're taking a quarterback. We're picking whatever we pick, 9th.
Even if it was 11th, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, we're picking a quarterback. You need to know that we are picking your successor.
You will be the starter, but
Atlanta was probably like, we'll pay you all of this money. What are your plans? Like, I'm sure the conversation of what are your plans for the future didn't even come up because
your contract
guaranteed money. And then they undercut him to pick Penix on top. I mean, it's just, what the Vikings are doing right now, what the Vikings are doing is, it's really fun. And if you're going to win games like you're going to win games, cripes, they have some flaws, man, but we always know Chicago's weird. They got throttled this weekend.
Right. Monday, they feel like a team that just wants the season to be over. And
but it's Monday Night Football. It's in spotlight. Caleb's got one more chance to prove himself in front of a national fan base. It's just always weird against Chicago, even if this game's going to be in Minnesota. But at Seattle, not easy. Home against Green Bay, not easy. At Detroit, obviously not easy. This is we're going to learn a little something about our favorite football team over the next month.
Exactly. And we talked about it even a couple weeks before, after they beat Tennessee and they got through the AFC South. We were like, okay, well, Chicago's still feisty. Arizona's competing for a playoff spot. Atlanta's competing for a playoff spot. And what do the Vikings do? Win. Like, they've every test so far they've passed. So we'll see what happens now as they play Chicago. And like you said, Seattle's going to be tough. The Vikings, I don't think have won a game on the West Coast in forever. So that'll be a thing to watch. Green Bay and Detroit to end the season. Vikings look like they're at least, unless the fall off here, Vikings have the second place spot in the division. They're the 1 seed is not out of reach. It's getting harder by the week, but the Lions still have to play the Vikings. They still have to play the Bears one more time. And then they have to play the 49ers, who, as we learned, can still play like a good football team, and the Bills, who lost yesterday to the Rams, but are still a good football team. It's not easy for Detroit, and their defense is banged up. It's tough, and Detroit's in the driver's seat, and they're probably going to win the division. But there's a non-zero chance the Vikings could have the 1 seed at the end of the year.
This comes from a hopeful Vikings fan. And I'd be interested to see what hopeful Packers fans think and even hopeful Bears fans think. But don't you keep coming back to at some point this BS that Dan Camp hit the
aggressiveness is going to catch up with him?
Wild West aggressiveness is just going to backfire on him at some point.
Well, you made the case it did in the last NFC Championship game.
And maybe that's okay. So thanks. That actually doesn't make me feel better. That means they burned their luck a year ago and it's all going to go their way this year.
Well, and the thing about Detroit is that it could burn them. They play with fire a lot, but also they're like a pyromaniac playing with fire. They figured out how to not get burned.
It's important. Like if they're aggressive and it doesn't work out in their favor, like if they try a fake punt or whatever, they go for it on 4th and 9 from their own 38, and you have to score. Right. So you have to put the pressure back on them immediately, because then it forces them to be aggressive out of rhythm.
Mm-hmm. Not like a confident playing with aggression, but like a desperation play. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's 100% correct. Zeke went to this game, by the way, and we need to get him on sometime this week to talk about that, because that had to have been a fun experience in person. There were some things going on in the field that Fox didn't show, like Darnold kind of like whipping the towel on the sideline, like hyping up the fans. And the Vikings were up by 3 scores with like 3 minutes to go. So they just had time to kill at the stadium. And they were giving like Jefferson and Addison and Darnold chances to kind of have curtain calls in front of the fans. And I want to hear Zeke's perspective on that on the sports desk. So we have to get him on sometime this week. That's Zeke's first ever Vikings game, by the way. So we need to send him to more Vikings games, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the tickets are available for anybody to purchase whenever they want. So, he can go whenever he wants.
I think we need to we need to get his credit card info, and we need to just start buying tickets for him.
Just start sending him with
we're buying him 50-yard line tickets.
Surprise. We bought you with your money tickets to see the Vikings. Have fun.
Have fun. It's already bought, man. You've already sunk cost. You got to go. You can't return them. You can't resell them. Nope. That's done. All right. Another good episode. We got a lot to talk about this week in high school sports. I'm looking forward to this broadcast tomorrow. It's going to be fun. Until next time, it's the Morning Sports Desk.
The Morning Sports Desk, available on demand on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and WHADenaRadio.com.